Hello. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the CGIAR Food and Agriculture Pavilion. This is our opening session, so thanks so much for attending. Hi to anyone who's online watching. In case you don't know, let me just read something. CGIAR is the world's largest publicly funded group of agri-food system research centers. Global research partnership for food and nutrition, secure future dedicated to transforming food, land, and water systems during a climate crisis. So that's what this pavilion is going to be all about for the next few days. We're running all the way through till Thursday, often 4 talks a day, sometimes 5. And we're kind of matching the COP program. So we've got talks on genetic resources, gender, communities, finance, all sorts. So anytime there's like little leaflets around, you can scan the program, you can scan the QR code just to see what our program is. So thank you so much. Hope to see you here for a few days, coming back again. So let me open up our first talk. It's from commitments to actions, making agroecosystem living labs work for the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. I'd like to introduce the 3 speakers that we have on the stage. So we've got Patrick Caron. He told me just to tell you that he's a researcher at CGIAR, but he's also the vice chair of the CGIAR Integrated Partnerships Framework, if I accept the framework partnership. Yep. So he's head of our CGIAR delegation this week. So thank you for coming. We've got Karen Clark, who's here from Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada. And we've got Marcelo Quintero, who's the Alliance of Biodiversity and CIAT Director General of Research. So thanks so much, everyone. Thanks for coming. And I'll move off the stage so you can start. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Ryan. And I'd like to join you in welcoming you all for this first event on the CGIAR Pavilion. Absolutely great. I'd like to acknowledge the contribution of Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada and to welcome all the delegations from CGIAR research centers, in particular IFPRI, International Food and Policy Research Institute, the IMI, I know it has been involved, the International Water Management Institute, and of course the Alliance, the local and global Alliance for CIAT and Biodiversity. I'd like as well to acknowledge the presence of farmers representative and government representative, and the involvement of the World Bank, of the FAO, and of CIRAD in this event. As you see, it's from commitments to actions, and it focuses on the key role of living labs, on agri-food living labs, which is looked at very, very important. I'm very happy, in fact, to engage in a dialogue that brings together agriculture, food, and biodiversity. You probably all know that it would have been just impossible a few years before. It was completely taboo, and it was very surprising and somehow paradoxical that all these sectors could not talk to each other and would fight to each other. So it's absolutely great that we have such an opportunity here. As you probably noticed, CGIAR has evolved since its inception, and it acknowledged now in the 2030 research and innovation strategy, not just the fact to increase the agricultural production, but to transform food, land, and water systems towards sustainable development. It's somehow a big shift and a paradigm shift. And in addition to that, and not only about the mission and the vision, but it acknowledged 5 impact areas on which the outcome of the research has to be studied, and in one of them is environmental health and biodiversity, and Ryan is the coordinator of that one, if I understood. Well, there is also from CGIAR not only this shift in focus, but an engagement and a commitment to engage in dialogue, in multi-stakeholders dialogue to make things happen and to address the interconnected food crisis, climate crisis, biodiversity crisis, social injustice challenges, what we call the perfect storm, or what we call, together with the institution that were involved in the Montpellier process, the food protect and care nexus. So it's also something new. It's about how to bring people together from different sectors to address this interconnected crisis, looking at the connection across scales, local, national, global, looking at the connection across sectors, I mentioned it, and looking at the connection across stakeholders. So Kargele has been very strongly involved in that, and the Montpellier process, thank you, Kargele, and the Montpellier process will be here the whole week, and it's just great. So within such a perspective, agroecosystem living labs are really key. They are really at the corner, and they are really important, critical to learn and to strengthen our capacity to design effective pathways for food, land, and water system transformation to achieve the biodiversity target and more generally the sustainable development goals. So that includes improve conservation and restoration of biodiversity, and that improve ecosystem functions and services across landscape. The agroecosystem living lab are really key and important, not only to experiment, but also to monitor the performance indicators of the implementation of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, and specifically the operationalization of the national biodiversity strategies and action plans. If we think about it, the effective implementation of this global biodiversity framework requires not only technical and social innovations, it also requires innovative financing and coherent policies at the national level and frameworks at the global level. And the research results from those living labs that we will have the pleasure to look at today are very informative to design the next steps for moving in that direction and for making adjustments based on the lessons learned. If we think about it, the achievement of this framework and this target requires the whole of society involvement. And the acronym that you find with all, I leave you the delicatesse to talk about it, is absolutely great, and really insist on the importance of participatory processes and participatory approach, which is the right one, not only to experiment and to illustrate the transformative pathways, but also to design inclusive action at the national and at the global levels. So it's all together that we can look at this Living Labs experience that put the decision-making process and the decision makers at the central part of this process. Well, I will not introduce the speakers. They are all great. They are all just fantastic. You are right to come here today. And it will illustrate the key importance of learning from each other, of listening to each other, and of learning from each other. It illustrates also the importance of regional and global scientific partnership and technological cooperation to transition from commitments to actions. As we say in CGIAR, with science we can. It's not just about spreading technology, it's about as well enlighten the world and imagining future scenarios and designing the right pathways. So I wish all of us stay here, a very fruitful discussion, a lot of learning, and the capacity to design the next steps together, all together. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. And I think I'm looking for some slides if they're coming up. Just good morning to all of you, and it's my pleasure to be here this morning to kick off today's event with some background about agroecosystem living labs, and to tell you a little bit about what they look like, what they are, and to share our experience in Canada from implementing these through a national network of living labs. And then I'll touch also on some of the international knowledge sharing that we've been engaging in, and which led us to co-host this event here today with CGIAR. If you could move the slides, please. It's not moving forward. Okay, so let me just first tell you a little bit about our motivation for launching these labs. So starting in 2018, Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada, which is our federal Department of Agriculture, launched a nationwide network of living labs to accelerate the development and adoption of sustainable practices and technologies by Canadian farmers. And we did this in recognition of the urgent need to accelerate action on climate change, as well as other agri-environmental challenges, including biodiversity. So what are these agroecosystem living labs, and how did they come about? The concept was first being developed in Canada and implemented, but it quickly became an international collaboration. So Canada first presented the agroecosystem living lab concept in the G20 as a promising approach to fostering widespread and rapid adoption of sustainable practices and technologies. And then, as you see there, the concept was further developed through an international working group of the G20 member states and the agricultural chief scientists, who defined it as it's on the screen, as transdisciplinary approaches involving farmers, scientists, and other interested partners in the co-design, monitoring, and evaluation of new and existing agricultural practices and technologies, and very importantly, on working landscapes to improve their effectiveness and early adoption. Okay, seems to be working now. So put more simply, the reason we looked at the agroecosystem living lab was because they provided an approach to agricultural innovation that would bring so many partners together, farmers, scientists, and others, to co-develop those solutions. And this approach also helped to identify, to refine this solutions so that they would be more easily adopted and more likely to be adopted. So the agroecosystem living labs are receiving an increasing amount of attention within the agriculture sector because they hold a lot of promise for accelerating that co-development, and as well as the adoption of innovations to catalyze those transitions, so that we're building greater resilience and sustainability in our agricultural landscapes, and for encouraging scientific knowledge exchange through collaboration. So they're not just research projects, they are knowledge exchange and collaboration, and for driving policy development. So all ecosystem living labs have three core principles that I'd like to elaborate on. So the first is a user-centered innovation, meaning that all of the activities within the living labs are focused on the needs of the user, and those users, who are usually farmers, are involved through the entire innovation process. So in an agroecosystem living lab, the innovations we're working on are farming practices that aim to increase and provide environmental benefits while still allowing the producers to remain profitable. And the second core principle is working in partnership. So that this means that the Living Lab helps bring experts from various disciplines to tackle a common issue. And finally, real world context, where the innovations are being tested in the location where they're being used to make them more robust, and then they have that strong support on the ground with the scientific research. These core principles come together in an innovation cycle that helps refine the innovations. So they start out as being co-developed, then they're tested, then they're evaluated, and that doesn't end. That continues. In Canada, that's generally an annual cycle because of the length of our growing season. It's quite short with long winters. So, but as each of those cycles progresses, the innovations are able to be improved and they become a better fit for the user's needs. At the same time, they're more likely to be adopted by others because they've seen that robust process for improvement. So, oh, sorry about that. So I hope that that's been a useful background, and then I want to shift to some of what we've been doing in Canada to apply these Living Labs. So our first Living Labs program ran from 2018 to 2023, and we started with an initial network of only 4 labs focused on accelerating the development of sustainable practices in the area of climate change, reducing water contamination, improving soil and water conservation, and maximizing habitat capacity and biodiversity. So just on the screen, we in that 5-year period, we developed or co-developed more than 50 different beneficial management practices on those 4 sites with farmers, scientists, and other partners. And many of these, those that you see in green, were specifically related to habitat capacity, pollination, and soil health. Our current program is called Agricultural Climate Solutions Living Labs, and it's focused on the innovations to increase carbon sequestration and reduce greenhouse gases, but with important co-benefits for other agri-environmental issues. So this is a 10-year program where we've invested $185 million in co-funding that co-development, that experimentation. And then you can think of that as the innovation stream. And then we have a parallel program called On-Farm Climate Action Fund to support farmers in implementing the adoption of some of those practices. One of the goals when we implemented this program was to have a living lab in each of our 10 provinces. We now have 14 living labs in our national network, and that includes over 1,000 people who are actively involved in that innovation and research within the network. And just very quickly, just a few of the different areas where we've been working in innovation. So as I said, our focus was recently on greenhouse gases, but there are a lot of co-benefits for biodiversity, and you see some of the grazing and pasture management activities, restoration activities as well that are included. I'm going to skip this slide, but it's just a few different examples of some of the activities, restoration activities, soil pollination support, and that kind of thing that have been focused on biodiversity. So one of the key aspects of the Living Labs program, as I mentioned, is knowledge exchange. So not making sure that these aren't just research projects on their own, but that they're really a living lab, and that the network itself functions as a network and not 14 different projects. And so one of the things that we've done is to establish 9 working groups, including one specifically focused on biodiversity, to foster that knowledge exchange and collaborate amongst the network. At the international level, we're also very active in the knowledge exchange, and last year hosted the first international forum on agroecosystem living labs with INRAE in Montreal. And this was an opportunity to bring together that international living labs community and discuss some of the successes and the challenges of the approach, and just wanted to note that the second annual forum second forum is happening next year in Bordeaux, France. And so I'd like to invite you all to attend that. Not working again. So all that to say that the forum builds on an ongoing knowledge exchange at the international level, whether it's various partners, international or European Commission, the G20, or specific countries or partners. And notably the CGIAR with whom we've organized this event today. So I'll stop there. I do have cards at the outside if you want to know more about the Canadian Living Labs.
Okay. Now, I would like to start first thanking Kargeli, the director of the environmental platform of the CGIAR, to put us together, because I see a lot of convergence on what is this network of OLS in Canada and what is also the network of OLS that we as the CGIAR has been putting together over the past years and that we look forward to keep continuous strengthening. So I think you are going to see actually many similarities, very happy similarities that I think we can unpack next year in the conference in France as well. So here I wanted to start saying that in our case, and I'm here talking about on behalf of all the CGIAR who is implementing this initiative on agroecology, where different centers of the CGIAR participate, but also other non-CGIAR partners like CIRAD, and also a large network of local partners. We start thinking on how to deploy, how to operationalize this concept of living labs. And then we call it, our A is more for agroecological living labs, but I think in practice is very similar. And the reason why is agroecological living labs, because we are kind of trying to see how to operationalize the agroecological principles that I'm going to mention later. But here what I wanted to highlight is that this concept of the living labs is not only about farming practices and changing those towards more sustainable ones, but it's also how from the OLS we can support an agroecological transition that implies also changes in the way farmers connect to the value chain. Farmers are included in an equitable way there. How the policy environment is also supporting this agroecological transition. So this is one thing. And the other thing is that with this approach, we also want to have a spiral up strategy where we start seeing agriculture as a beneficiary of and a major contribution of biodiversity. So that's the second point we want to make today, that I think the OLS could be a very good way to help supporting the countries in implementing their MBSAPs as well. So this, for those that are not familiar with the agroecological principles, these they are. Very similar to what you just presented. Co-creation of knowledge is at the very core of the implementation of this approach. And some of these principles are more at the agroecosystem levels, that are the ones that are at the dark, in the dark circles. And the ones in the top are more also those principles that need to be applied beyond the farm, more at the food system level to be able to support the agroecological transition. So here, 2 points I want to highlight that then agroecological transition is, it implies making changes in the agroecosystem, but also at the food system level. And then I want also to call the attention on the role that diversification play in the agroecological transition. So it's part of the agroecological principles. And now we also have sufficient evidence that shows that when we increase diversification of farming and landscapes, we can also increase the benefits to farmers, but also to the biodiversity itself, like for example, providing more resources for the species. So that's why in agroecology, we also make a lot of emphasis to diversification. And that's why I said that the agroecological living labs could be a good way to support also the implementation of the MBSAPs in the countries. So what are these? And I think this is also very converge a lot with what you just have said, and is that for us is agroecological living landscapes. And then we start not calling only labs, but it's just to give this sense that it's not only about what happened in a trial or in a field trial, but what happened in landscapes in physical terms, but also in from the social perspective. And is where we can trigger context relevant agroecological transition. And at the same time, we can learn from there and build evidence on what is working and what is not working in different contexts. So this is the what. And the who is very important. It's not only the farmers who we want to engage there, but also traders, processors, scientists, consumers who agree on engage in an agroecological transition with a common vision. And the how, again, the co-design of new practices is important, but also the co-design of new business models, of new financial mechanisms, and also of strategies to unlock policy bottlenecks that can impede the advancement of the agroecological transition. And on the why, of course, we as a researcher wants to understand what is working, what is not working, and then compare across different contexts to keep building evidence on this. So, oops, thank you. It went super fast. So, again. So we start implementing also a network of owls across 8 countries from Latin America, Africa, and South Asia. And here I want to highlight that is really a very promissory space to capacity sharing and to learn across the different contexts. And again, here, this is why we said this could support the capacity sharing efforts to implement the GBF targets in each of the countries. So I think will be a very good opportunity to start linking up all these different networks of ALS. Again, in the ALS, there are changes in terms of how food is produced in different type of systems, depending on the priority of farmers, depending on the agroecologists, etc. So this is to show you just some examples of the type of the co-design practices in each of the countries where we are working are very different, which means that we, together with the other actors, need to be very adaptive because we need to bring different type of knowledge depending on the needs and the type of systems that we want to support. However, it's not only about the farming practices, as I was saying, but it's also about engaging with other actors to create the enabling environment to expand this. So for example, in Peru, the initial interest of farmers was to improve the production of cocoa that is associated with deforestation, and they want to encroach in organic cocoa. However, they also say that they need to diversify their livelihoods and their farms. So we start working with the local government in their strategy for the promotion of biotrade. And this is basically to show that through these connections with other food system actors, now there is a biotrade strategy that is supporting these farmers for their diversification of their livelihoods. And at the same time, we are helping to provide evidence of how this is working or not. Similarly, in Kenya, the farmers there were interested in keep and expanding the use of biopesticides, water harvesting, agroforestry, but they were alone on this, and there were not a clear impact pathway to scale out and up this option. So again, we start engaging with all these different partners that are there to find ways to support inclusive business models that can help them to scale out the model. But also we also engage with the government and the National Agroecology Policy Group in Kenya and trying to see what are the required policy changes that are needed to scale up all of these practices, and because there is a demand for these practices in different type of value chains. So this is again to show, when I said agroecological transition, what I was trying to refer to, and it's trying to go beyond the change in the farming practices, but also trying to see what are those changes that are required in the whole landscapes of the food system to help to move up those agroecological transition. Similar case in Tunisia. I'm not going to stop here, but I want to highlight here that we have been also making the analysis, okay, if this type of agroecological transitions are implemented, how we can connect these to the targets that the countries have under the GBF framework. So here I put example in Tunisia, how we are targeting different targets that are now in the GBF. So again, and I was in another session now in the NBSAPs, what is going to be important is how we can start monitoring how those different changes that happen in OLS or in other actions that are implemented in the countries start being monitored to be able to demonstrate also how that is contributing to improve the achievement of the goals of the GBF in each of the countries. So the all approach is good, but if we don't make that linkage with the monitoring systems of the countries, all this effort is going to be kind of invisible to the governments. So with this, I want to end and thank you everyone. And thank you again, Kageli.
Yeah, thank you very much, Patrick, Karen, and Marcela, for making the discussion quite interesting. And I think you still have time to stay with us. Now we are going to move to and thanks for really everyone for making the time. Now we are going to move to panel discussions. We will have a first panel talking about innovations. But innovations are good, but the means for implementation are also very critical. So the second part of the discussion will be about financing mechanism in terms of the agroecological living landscapes or agroecosystem living labs, which are just brothers and sisters. So with this, let me invite the first team or the panelists. So we have Chaturangi, who comes to us from International Water Management Systems. Then we have Selim coming to us from CIRAD. And then we do have Karin representing the farming communities, but also combining with business. So with this, let me also have a seat and get the first question. Probably to you, Chaturangi, really coming from your research perspective, Marcela just said it, that really the work we do in the agroecological living landscape is very, very critical in terms of informing the NBSAPs or in general, the Global Biodiversity Framework. Based on your experience, can you give us one or two examples of tools or innovations that you believe can come out from the agroecological living landscape, which countries should consider as they implement and update the NBSAPs?
And thank you, Marcela, for the great start. So I'll probably emphasize a little bit on what Marcela has already said and try to connect the dots between the agroecology initiative and also the tools that have been developed and using it within these agroecological living labs and beyond. So as we discussed, these systems are very different. They're very vastly different in terms of the biophysical conditions, the climatic conditions, the governance landscape, and also the multitude of socioeconomic conditions that these communities face. So the entry point for agroecological transition is very different from one living system to another. So you have to find out where's the entry point and what's the agroecological transition strategy in consultation with the local stakeholders. So this is very vital. And in order to do that with the agroecology, under the agroecology initiative, we use several different methodologies. And the first one usually started with having a vision to action stage, where the farmers and the local stakeholders and the food system actors are encouraged to think about their future. So what do they envision for their farm or the farming landscape? And then think about the desired changes. So that's the beginning of it. And then we can conduct like co-designed workshops, as Marcela mentioned briefly, just to understand what are the existing practices and what can be improved in line with agroecological principles that can help achieve those desired changes that they envisioned. So these are very specific methodologies that are really important and are valuable, because sometimes we tend to implement or recommend practices that are not of much value to the local community. So this is the co-design process that we implemented under the agroecology initiative. And so already we spoke a little bit about the Kenya example, but I'll elaborate a little bit more so that we can connect the dots between that and the GBF targets. So within the Kenya example or Kenya all, there were two counties, the Kiambu and Makueni counties, and those farming communities were mostly interested in identifying or improving practices related to three specific fields. So soil conservation, water conservation, and integrated pest management. So through the co-design process, they prioritize a few different practices that they thought were feasible and are relevant within the given context. So they implemented soil conservation in terms of applying compost manure and water conservation practices in terms of mulching and using plant-based biopesticides for integrated pest management. And when you're looking at these different practices, although you might think they're not innovative at that level in that context, they are innovative for them. And these are new and improved practices that can sustainably intensify agricultural practices there. So if you're looking at the GBF targets, these directly link to target number 10, which is improving the areas managed under forestry, agriculture, and aquaculture. And then you can also look at the co-design process really supports the achieving targets related to target number 22, which is on enhancing inclusion and decision-making for sustainable practices that improve biodiversity as well. So these are the direct targets that these practices from the Kenya example can support, but indirectly, most of these improved practices can support many of the GBF targets. For example, like reducing pollution, because now we are using organic chemicals rather than synthetic fertilizers and pesticides. So there are different ways that these different practices can support achieving the targets, GBF targets, directly or indirectly. So once these practices are implemented, you also need tools and metrics to assess the benefits and the limitations of these practices. So right now in existence, there are so many tools and frameworks available to do this, but all of them have inherent limitations. And one of the main limitations is that they don't adapt to local conditions. And the ultimate results produced by these frameworks or tools or guidelines are not of much use to the local community, and they are not of much value. So just to meet or address this gap under the agroecology initiative, we developed the HOLPA tool, which is a holistic localized agroecological performance assessment. So this has 3 different modules looking at the context, the state of agroecology within that assessment unit, whether it's a farm or farming landscape. And then you also have the performance module, which has a number of different indicators related to 18 different themes, 18 different performance themes covering 4 different domains, agricultural, economic, social, and environmental. So one thing to note is that some of the indicators can also help with monitoring GBF targets as well, because there are certain indicators that are in both GBF as well as HOLPA, so that can assist with GBF monitoring as well. And of course, these tools can be used beyond ALS. And for example, right now in Sri Lanka, although it's not part of this agroecology initiative, we are looking at how HOLPA can be implemented and can be used to assess certain agroecological practices implemented by the farming community. So it's a very versatile tool that encourage and empower all food system actors, from producers to farmers to researchers, to policymakers, to engage, decide, design, and implement and monitor. I'll stop there. We can discuss more further.
Great, thank you very much, Chaturangi, because most of the things you said and echo some of the points that Marcel made. The monitoring tools that you are developing, and the fact that some really countries really needs kind of that knowledge sharing in terms of developing the proposal for the Global Biodiversity Framework Funds becomes very, very critical. So stay tuned to make sure that that knowledge can be integrated really in the update of the NB subs. We have heard it from Karen that everything is context specific, and probably Marcela said the same. So I do believe there are many research scientists here involved. We just said from CGI in general, but I do believe our colleagues from CIRAD have been also doing really similar work, but different contexts. Let us hear from Celine.
Thank you, Kargele, and thank you for this nice invitation and opportunity to speak for this to this important event. And I'm here talking on behalf of my two colleagues, Bernard Triomphe and Eric Ball, who are the two research fellows heavily involved in this initiative. So first, Marcela has shown the map of the different agroecosystem living labs, and we are, as CIRAD, involved in two of them in West Africa, one in Bobo Dioulasso in Burkina Faso. And in this particular agroecosystem living lab, it's a bit at odds, I would say, with the general spirit of agroecology, since it's focusing on one commodity, which is milk, and its value chain. But the important thing is that the overall it really helps to build a kind of a agroecological business model for the dairy sector in this particular region. And so it's really aligned with in that case with the objective of agroecology, and it does that through the biodiversification of the forage system, and with two related innovations: the fodder demo plot, and also a cooperative forage seed production and distribution system within the the living lab. And a second innovation is the management advice on feeding cows on free-range pastures, using a digital tool that really help to valorize the spontaneous forage biodiversity. And then there is also a valorization of local non-timber forest products in the manufacture of yogurts, actually, using the milk, the local milk, and using those natural flavor coming from those non-timber forests. So in the other case, in Senegal, the colleagues are working on different topics that are more or less directly related to maintaining the biodiversity at different scales, like restoration of saline lands and participatory also scenario of local agroforestry association, co-design of resilience and innovative agroecological territory ideotype. Anyway, so beyond these two examples related to the agroecological initiative, CIRAD has been involved also with different partners in different locations in many other living labs, and from all that we take there are three takeaway messages that I would like to highlight from those experiences. The first one, which is kind of common, but it's important to still highlight it, is the fact that we are not dealing with technological innovation, but we are dealing with mainly social and governance innovation. It's really about how people get organized together, people coming from different background, having different objective, different capacity, and still working together for a common goal. And that's really, and there are several ways of doing that, and there are a lot of learning to draw from that experience, the social and the way, the diversity of way people get together and find that kind of agreement and build rules to build also the trust over time to continue that collaboration spirit beyond, I would say, even the lifetime of a project. So that's really, we think, a very important aspect that is
because farmers have much knowledge to share. Everything we know about agriculture comes from the farmers. So if a researcher arrives in a farm and think he knows everything just to have this space as a lab, the researchers don't want to listen the farmers first. It won't gonna be a living labs. It won't gonna be a co-creation, because if you are not at the same level of discussion, we are not doing co-creation and living labs. And so farmers and researchers at the same level, at the same table. And then we need to have nature as our teacher, because who better than nature know how to produce food at the same time that take care about biodiversity, about soil, about water. Nature do it. There are billions of years. And we as human, we arrive at and we think we know how to grow food. And then we ignore everything nature teach to us. We go away from nature to do what we think we know how to do. And what we have now, the green revolution failed. And we need to assume that. That's the reason we are having this problem. The green revolution failed. And why? Because we moved away from nature and we ignored everything nature needs and have to teach us. So farmers and researchers at the same level, and nature as our best and perfect teacher. We are nature. You know, we are nature. We are part of it. If we are not together, we can't do anything. So another point that I have to share, it's Earth, it's a live organism. As our body, when we have, for example, COVID or some virus or bacteria, what our body do? It repel, go out, you know? So our planet and the Earth, it's alive. If we, as humanity, do things that destroyed nature, what Earth as a organism, a live organism will do? Go out. It's not good for my body. I'm alive. So if we don't have this as an important point, as humanity, I'm sorry, the Earth will continue, and we as humanity can't live at this planet. So if you want to continue to live at this planet, as humanity, we need to work with nature, for nature, and not in an opposite way. And for me, in all these years working with agroforestry, I understand and I have experienced that agroecology is the most intelligent and multifunctional tool to work with all these problems we are having with climate change, with agrobiodiversity laws, and everything we are talking about this in this COP. So agroecology can help us to solve it as a tool, as an intelligent tool, as a philosophy, as a science, as practice. So I'm happy to listen to you talking about agroecology as a way to find solution, because I believe in and I agree to agroecology can help us to achieve this food system transformation that we are talking about here at this COP. Because we can't talk about biodiversity without talk about food system transformation. If you want to have this transformation, we need to put food system at the center of the discussion. So now I will just show you some pictures about my living labs. So here, this is the way we grow food, because if you go to a forestry that it's grown naturally, we will never see only one crop. Never. Why we do only one crop? Because we are not listening nature. We are not we are not having nature as our teacher. Because if in nature mix all the crops and it's perfect, it works, the results are nice. Why we do the opposite way? Why we do monoculture? So we, in our farm, we don't do monoculture, we mix the crops and we have lots of tons of harvest of food. So it calls agroforestry system because we mix trees with crops. So we have many, many crops and we take care about the varieties of tomatoes, of cabbage, of many, many crops I want to mention here. But one of our work is to take care about seeds because we need seeds to continue growing food and have harvest because the seeds can adapt in this transformation that we are living, this crisis we are living. And if we keep these seeds and we plant and harvest every year, we have more chance to have better crops, to have a better harvest. So it's really important to take care about the seeds and the biodiversity. Not only the red tomato, okay? We have more than 1,000 varieties of tomato. Why? We only have red tomato. We think we choose what we eat, but no, we choose what the supermarkets offer. We are not choosing because we have many, many varieties and people don't know because they don't access that. So many pictures of production. We have fruits, we have vegetables, we have mushroom. And now this is the main crop we are harvesting in our farm because we grow trees, and when the trees grow, the shadow come, the vegetable need lots of sunshine. So this is, in our farm, is the moment for the mushroom that like shadow and humidity. So we plant trees, we have no fear to plant trees. The trees are not our enemy. It can provide good shadow and humidity for the mushroom, for example, and other fruits too, and many, many crops. More picture. And this is my business. Say I'm a specialist in business. This is my business. I'm in a street market in Curitiba, in the state of Paraná, in the south of Brazil. There are 9 years I have this business. And it's really important because it's much more than just selling and buying food and stuffs. Here we have the opportunity to talk with the consumers, to talk about agroecology, to talk about what we are doing, to bring our logs with many of shiitake and to tell them how to grow shiitake in a good way, in an agroforestry, in an agroecology way. So it's much more than just sell and buy. And here we can see our consumer really happy choosing their shiitake. And we sell it in our online shopping too that started in pandemic, but it's still going on. And we process too. Unfortunately, I don't have my shiitake with me because I forgot it at the hotel, but I always bring with me my shiitake dryer to show it's possible to grow and to harvest many, many foods, ton of foods in agroecology and agroforestry system. So we process because it can keep 1 year. And if we sell it nature, we have only 10 days. We teach too, when we share knowledge, so people from city come to our living labs to understand how we do, to understand how the food they eat grows, and to work with us too. Because it's a really good way to learn. Here we can see the difference between monoculture and agroforestry. I think we can be more happy here. And we can't talk about agro-food system without people. So people are in the center of the discussion. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much, Karina, for proving to us that we can't achieve the changes, the difference we want to make without listening to those who are really on ground. And the most important thing is really, the context of the COP is peace with nature. Really, how do we make sure that we take care of the nature? You showed everything that we need to do to reduce the threat to nature. but also thinking about the benefits. And I think indirectly you have been able to cover a presentation that we're expecting from FAO, which was about striking the right balance in terms of food security, livelihoods, and conservation. And the person of FAO is doing also a good job because he's spreading so that we make sure that biodiversity is included into the nutrition discussion. So we make sure that there is a clear linkage between biodiversity and nutrition. So he has to deliver a statement. He could not be with us, but I think you have done justice to this topic. Now I'll give you something like 30 seconds, and we will start again with Chaturang to tell us really what is your key message in a keyword to the negotiators who are around, what they can take from the agroecological living landscape, agroecosystem living labs in terms of the way they are updating the NBSAPs. 30 seconds, please.
30 seconds. Okay. I think they really have to integrate sustainable agriculture and agroecology into the negotiations and look at how agroecology can help in achieving most of these targets. If you really look into it, almost all of the targets can be supported by agroecological practices.
Okay, so agroecology for me and for many of my colleagues that are here too, thank you, is the most intelligent and multifunctional way to achieve climate change, to achieve biodiversity loss, to change it, okay? So agroecology is the way, and we can do it if we are together.
So just building on what my two colleagues have just said, I think really agroecology can provide, it should not be limited to a target 10, basically. That's the main message, and that it provides a way to address in a kind of a much more holistic way the different targets. So that's, I think, a very powerful message to convey to the decision maker at the national level, to try to look at agroecology as really a comprehensive solution to address the different targets of the GBF.
Yeah, thank you very much. Help me to thank the three speakers. As we move to, thanks, you can have a seat. As we move to the next panel with Wei Zhang coming to us from the IPRIP, and Peter Goodman coming to us from World Bank. And we are expecting Louis Yoronima, who was coming from the Ministry of Agriculture here in Colombia. But I do believe with competing priorities, we will see whether I will be able to show up. But I have no doubt that the two colleagues here can even get us started. Stay around, we'll have like 15 minutes to engage with you, so don't go before then. I will start with you, Wei. So we just heard about what is happening in terms of the research. And I know you have been also working in the context of agroecosystem living labs, but with the particular focus on dealing with the climate change issues we are facing, which I think everything we said, we need to take that into consideration. It's one of the mega trends. Can you tell us how really the work you have been doing can be useful in terms of integrating, because everyone is talking about integrating the 3 Rio conventions. How can your work really inform the integration, for example, the NBSAPs and the NDCs? The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation. So we've heard a lot of commonalities across different approaches, but also different approaches has emphasis. So let me briefly introduce our approach, and we're happy to answer questions later. So in the CGIAR research initiative on low emission food systems, we've proposed a living lab approach for food system transformation as an adaptive process where stakeholders co-produce knowledge and collaborate based on inclusivity and empowerment. In building on the existing literature on living labs, our specific concept for this approach is what we call living lab for people. So we added people explicitly into this to emphasize that we see the strengths of living labs in its potential to mobilize people and the institutions that are supposed to work for them in this joint effort for food system transformation. So it's a people-oriented approach. So through that, food system transformation will not only embody a new mindset with new norms, but also facilitate a change in governance to strengthen local capacity and institutions to address power imbalances issues. So our focus is not just on products and technology, technical innovations. We also focus very much on local actors and institutions and how they work together in the way they want to achieve what the future they want. So my colleague, Ryan Naring, the audience, he's co-leading this conceptualization of the living lab approach with Birgit Haberman at IORI. Again, we're happy to interact after this. So why I think living lab approach can inform coordination, I don't think we have other choices. So by design, living lab for people should be about supporting local actors, food system stakeholders in addressing local objectives, needs, and challenges in alignment with national ones. So we know their objectives and interests are multifaceted, and therefore solutions have to be integrated and designed to maximize synergies and reduce trade-offs. And to be honest, I don't know how long we can afford trade-offs between key issues such as climate change, about diversity, livelihoods, development. So our research really has to anticipate and assess trade-offs better and inform the design to maximize synergies and reduce trade-offs. So these global challenges that affect everybody. Organizations at us, we have to understand what the local priorities are and find our right entry point to support. And I resonate with Carolina about, you know, research and the farmers at the same level. Indeed, we have to tailor our participatory action research such that we can recognize the primary objectives and the co-benefits and adjust our support accordingly rather than importing or imposing our agenda. I'll give one example of our Living Lab story. So originally our local stakeholders were not intrinsically interested in emission control or mitigation, or at least they didn't think this is a local priority. But they did see environmental quality improvement, in particular water quality improvement, a priority because of human health, but also the economic opportunities brought about by improved environmental quality. So the key question is, how do we support them to improve environmental quality, which they care dearly, while also being able to be positive about biodiversity and delivering mitigation benefit. So in my view, that's the kind of question we should be really looking at.
Thank you very much, Wei. And I think it's a good way of getting to Peter in terms of how do we make things happen. And when we hear about World Bank is really financing the big project, infrastructure, agriculture, conservation, and so on. And Peter, after listening to all the colleagues who have spoken, how do you see the bank really investing in financing research within the context of agroecosystem living labs? And I don't have to say it for Karin, to say it for Marcela, and everyone who has spoken. We have a financing gap in terms of implementing the research. How can we address those gaps? Let us see what you can share with us. Thanks,
Good.
Peter.
Thanks, Kagei. So,
I think it works.
So thanks very much. So yes, how can we use living labs to help us help countries make their GBF targets? I think actually kind of hit the nail on the head. It's really I think these living labs really help us to fill the gap between research and practical implementation in the field. It's very good to have research which shows how technologies work under perfect conditions, but there's a whole load of other social and governance contexts that you need to have conditions that you need to have in place to make that work. And being able to, if you can clearly document that and give that to us, that's really helpful for us in designing our projects. And remember, our projects are not, can be cross-sectoral and multidisciplinary. So it may be that, yes, we have an agricultural project which supports a certain technology, but maybe we also need to have a land governance component in there. Maybe we need to have measures in there for community-based natural resource management, or maybe there's other sectoral issues related to water or something we need to address at the same time to make it work. So I think these living labs really help to fill that gap. The second thing I'd say is that I think you can use these living labs to really clearly tease out and to document how agricultural practices at the farm level, at the field level, at the farm level, at the landscape are affecting biodiversity, and how biodiversity is affecting the ecosystem services that support agriculture. Because if you can tell us, how what that linkage is, that's a really good argument for discussions with the Ministry of Agriculture for repurposing agricultural spending towards biodiversity friendly practices, not only because they're important for water security and food security and public health, but they're actually necessary for agriculture. So it's not that we're investing in agriculture and we get these biodiversity kind of byproducts, but that we need biodiversity to sustain the ecosystem services, which are a foundation for agriculture. And if you put it in that context, I think you'll be able to show how repurposing agricultural spending towards these kind of practices that you were showing the living labs can help meet, as you said, not only target 10, but actually many of the targets. So document that out and map it. I would also say, just following on from that as the technology evolves in terms of biodiversity monitoring, build that into the project so that you can actually document these results quantitatively and really show how you are affecting biodiversity. So turning to the financing, what would you need to do to integrate these into World Bank projects or use them as a tool to leverage up World Bank finance? The first thing is a really basic one, is just awareness of the concept. So, I mean, that's something we can help with through webinars with our teams. Just making our teams aware of the concept is really important. Secondly, I would say you need to think about getting involved with the World Bank teams and our clients at a very early stage. So you need to kind of foresee what investments are going to be coming up down the line. I mean, some years down the line, and then maybe think about structuring, designing your living labs to be able to inform some of those projects. We have trust funds that could support living labs prior to an investment project. So there's the NBS Invest Fund, which is financed by Jeff. There's the Pro Green Trust Fund, which is financed by the multilateral donors, and you could potentially use some of these to finance living labs, to provide the evidence and make the case for investing in nature. And then you can use that evidence to help design the bigger investment projects. So, talk with the government, talk with the World Bank teams, and try to see what topics would be of interest. Of course, they have to be topics that your communities are interested in, not just topics that happen to be of interest to that project. So you need to kind of you need to kind of marry the two. So yeah, more awareness, talk to the teams early on. There are resources there prior to investment projects to fund this type of work, to provide the evidence. And then the last thing I would say is that you then need to show how the results of the living labs are going to be scaled up. Because it's very nice to put a lot of money into a living lab and have nice results. It looks great, but then where are you going from there? So we're not just in investment projects, we're not just looking at piloting things, experimenting. We want to see how that can be scaled up. So you need to think through that and how you're going to take your lessons to the advisory services, to the community organizations, and then maybe use investment project resources to scale it up. So let me leave it there.
Thank you very much, Peter. I think you have given us enough tips that allow me not to even to go to the next question. Now I will open it to, please stay where you are for the two of you. I'll open it to the public. We have something like 7 minutes or so to go. Please, I see your hand. And
Thank you so much, the moderator. I'm Nawami Christine, a small-scale peasant farmer from Uganda. I want to wake up one day, this goes to Peter. I want to wake up one day when I'm an employee of World Bank and Karina, an employee of CGIAR, maybe another farmer here, an employee of FAO, because I'm thinking we need to be seated in those boardrooms so that we can feed in and input in those meetings. Whatever Peter's been talking about, we are not only small-scale farmers, but we are the researchers ourselves. So you no longer need researchers. You need maybe writers and those people who are going to document. The researchers are here with you. And we are able to input in everything, the systems that you've been talking about, the linkages, we already here in this meeting. So I'm of a view that I think we are in a better position to feed you with all the information that you need. Let me take it from what Karina just showed us, the slides. The living labs that we are talking about, for us in Uganda, we call them community agroecology schools. And we do the same things. We are trying to retrieve and revive back the seed, the indigenous knowledge, share them with communities, the practices. Actually, when it comes to financing, what we need as farmers, what we need is very small from you, that we make natural pesticides and fertilizers ourselves. So we need financing for the materials to make those fertilizers on our farm, not buying from shops, because when we buy, we are forced to go back. But now we are putting it at a farmer level, whereby every person is able to produce in their own households. So what we need is that little support to improve on our farming systems. And the food systems that you're talking about is what we're already working on. So we are better seated in those boardrooms to show you how the practices are going. And we are better off asking us, where do you need the financing to go? So as for these meetings that we are in here, what would beg that it is better we moved from paper. We get what is on paper, we come down to the real people who need what is on paper. So we are trying to look for those actions. The actions should be felt by me, the small-scale farmer. So I need it on me, not in these meetings. After discussing here, we have to go back to those meetings. And we have a slogan in Uganda that we, the small-scale farmers, we move by the leg. After making these submissions for long, you'll find that at one point we shall go silent and do our own things. And these meetings will find us on our farms because they'll have to come and get it real. So the researchers are here. You better make us part of the teams so that we can input on what is actually the real knowledge that you need for documenting.
Okay. Let me just try and respond quickly then. So the first thing I would say is, the decisions are not made here and in the boardrooms often. Remember that we are lending money to governments to implement projects, and the governments at national level are working with local government. That's the first thing I would say. So you can, if you have good ideas and you have concepts, you talked about this community seed funds, something similar, I think. If you think you've got a really good example of something that should be scaled up, communicate it through local government. You can communicate it to the teams in the country offices, the World Bank teams. There's people like me sitting in the country office in Kampala and so on. And they have good relationships with, community-based organizations who are implementing things in the field. So don't feel shy if you've got good ideas to take it to the country teams or the NGOs who are working in your areas, and try and get the teams both from the government and the World Bank to look at it. You'd be surprised that they may be quite interested to come and see it, and then we can build on that and try and build it into to project investments. So yeah, if you've got good ideas, by all means, bring it to the attention of the country teams.
Thank you very much, Peter. Anything you would like to add, Wei?
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, our experience, we do notice, definitely we recognize the need for some startup funding, but we see the research, system research, not only to address enabling environment, including markets and policies, but also business models, so that there is a longer term pathway for more agroecological biodiversity positive approaches. But yeah, but farmers, when they first start some innovation, they need support. And in our Kenya team, we do support our local hosts. So we have a local host for the Living Lab to make sure there is institutional sustainability, so that when CG stops working there, they can continue. So we invest in that, and they in fact, are interested in submitting proposals for funding so that they can continue this. They can continue supporting capacity building activities and innovation case evaluation, submission and board and all that. So yeah, so I think we have to look at this in a very sustainable, like systematic and strategic way.
Thank you. As I try to make my also comment to what you just said, I will invite Karen to join us here, because we are heading almost towards the end of the discussion. Ria, thank you very much for your contribution. You were there from the beginning, and I think you have been listening actively. The good point is they only have a few minutes to tell what they have been doing for years. I do believe everything you've said can find its way from what Peter said, from where everyone has said. I think we really need to strengthen that working together aspect. Everyone said it. Everything we need to do is user-oriented so that we can get there. Marcela talked about business cases, business models that have to be developed in this. And for most of the work you have been doing can easily find its room in terms of the business models. The good news, Uganda is not too far from Kenya. So at least for some of the things that we have been doing in Kenya, we can do it in Uganda. And I think on our mapping, we are trying to revisit our programs. And I think I have gotten a few projects in Uganda that will add Uganda to our maps. Marcela showed us like 10 countries on the map. But as we move forward, I will say it the way we tend to say it in Africa, God willing, probably we'll have like 48 countries. And of those, we will have Uganda, we will have the farmers in Uganda involved. With this, I will stop, and once again, thank you. But the floor is really for Karen to give us some concluding remarks. And probably I will not put the words in her mouth, but I know she's committed to thank you a lot for your time.
Thank you, Cargill, and thank you to all of our speakers, those still up here and those of you there, and for everyone here. This has just been such a very rich discussion, and I think very educational and informative. So a big thank you to everyone who's participated. And I guess the task falls on me to try and summarize it, and I don't know that I can do that justice in 3 minutes that are remaining. But I guess some of I think the key themes that I've heard this afternoon, and I think Patrick started with reminding us of the acronym of ALL, and we've heard that over and over again, of just the importance of this being a people-centered approach, and putting everyone at the same level, bringing everyone's expertise and really recognizing it as expertise. And by doing that and through that collaboration, that partnership, that we can really push towards to a transition to agroecology or agroecosystem resilience and to sustainability and working with nature. So Another key theme I think I heard was, and definitely heard, was regionality and adaptability. So making sure that we're recognizing the context that we're working in, and that is going to change from each project. So in Canada, we have 14 different sites, and they're all different, and that's going to be the same with all of the different experiences that we've seen. And so again, building off of the expertise in those local areas, but then trying to use that collaborative approach no matter where we are. And building on the knowledge sharing, and so that making sure that this isn't just about research. It's really about, although it is about research, but it's also about that transition. And it's dynamic and alive. I think Karina brought that forward. I guess another thing I heard was the need to start to minimize some of our trade-offs. So not look, one of the benefits of this approach really being that we're looking at a systems perspective, and we're not just looking at climate change. We're not looking just at biodiversity. We're trying to integrate. So thank you to everyone who brought that forward. But a few challenges I think I wrote down and heard from a few people, just the need to qualify or quantify some of our outcomes, and so that we can use that for scaling up, for financing, and showing that showing the effectiveness of the Living Labs approach, so that we've been talking a lot about using this to make action on those NBSAPs, and without being able to demonstrate progress, then we're not going to be able to justify that these are really valuable and that we need to invest in them. So I guess so many things. Just one of the other things was just the importance of building trust, and that when you don't have that trust, that you're not going to be able to move forward. So really needing to bring in the listening and the co-creation aspect. So I think CGIAR and Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada that I represent work together to bring this panel today, just to give you a great taste of the work that's going on, and it was really tremendous, so thank you, and just show the potential of this agroecosystem living lab approach. It's going to take a lot of commitment, and I think those in the room seem quite committed, and I really appreciate that. But then I know it was Peter mentioned about just the need to build awareness. So taking that commitment, and sharing and building the knowledge. One of the places I'll reiterate, the International Forum on Agroecosystem Living Labs, taking place next October. So let's continue this conversation and continue to build and drive this forward. So thank you to CGIAR for hosting this, and to all of my panelists, and thanks, Kargeli.
Thank you very much, Karen. And I think this is a really good time, and we thank everyone, as I said it earlier, in terms of contributing. We are lucky this is the first one in a series of 36 side events happening. And I can tell you, it was a good appetizer and really interesting. But the upcoming ones are also as exciting as this one. Please don't miss the next ones. But in the meantime, I invite everyone who has been able to contribute to this discussion also to join here, just that we can get a group photo, assuming that there is anyone who's ready to take the photo for us. Thanks.
Yes.